Uh, I know you only have a few minutes. I want to talk about the Amazon thing, but maybe you should just briefly tell us about what you're doing as a producer.
Okay. Um, well, it's such a simple question, and it's so hard for me to answer simply. But essentially, Randy, you and I, we come from the world of theater and development and the idea of collaboration, and that's the thing that's sort of sparked our interests and our desires and our passions. And I come at it originally as an actor, and you from a producer, but really what we are storytellers and collaborators. So when it came to this pilot, I'd been working on a film called The Weatherman that Gore Verbinski directed with Nicolas Cage and Michael Caine and Hope Davis and Michael Rispoli and a few other fantastic people about 10 years ago. And I loved the script. I get really excited when the energy on the page is unusual and unique. And I felt like this guy, Steve Conrad, was a definitive voice. And so on my first day of filming, I'm walking back to the trailers at lunch, and I said to the AD, I said, I hear the writers around. Is he anywhere nearby? And I hear, hi, Gil. I'm Steve. And he was right behind me. And we started this friendship, and it just kept growing. And I said to him, I said, you're such a great writer. I think that you've carved out this great world for yourself in film, but I really think that television is your domain, because in television the writer is the king, and you have such great stories and you tell stories in such a circular way. I think it would serve you better to explore television. So we kicked around these ideas for about 6 months, and then we came up with this idea. And when I say we, I mean it's mostly him. He's kind of a genius, but I was kind of there, going, yes, I like this. How about this? And we riffed. And then a few months after that, he had a window. He wrote a spec script, and we sold it to FX. And that was 9 years ago. So the process to
Okay,
get
so
to
explain
Amazon.
what a spec script is and what FX is.
Okay, so FX is the cable network that is part of the Fox world for television, and they're very prestigious. They do Sons of Anarchy and The Americans and Louis, and they're very, very good network. And we really liked the leadership there, and they loved the idea and they loved the project.
So he
They
had
bought
written
it.
a script that didn't have an owner. He just wrote it on speculation. And
Yeah,
this is an old world TV studio. Like, where do you go? Is there somebody whose job it is to talk to you?
that's exactly right. There were actually three people. There was the head of drama, there was the head of programming, and there was the head of the network. And because they're a very prestigious, but they're a small network, all of them were at the meeting, and they all loved it, and they bought it in the room, and they wanted to make it, but they ultimately didn't for reasons that still make my head itchy, and so the project languished for a little while, and then
So who
about
owned it? Steve owned it, or did you own it, or?
we owned it.
Okay.
The rights reverted back to us. Steve is the screenwriter, and we share story credits, so that's the way it sort of moved from there. And then from there, we went to it went to WGN, which is this new network, in essence, which is a Chicago-owned set of affiliates that have been consolidated into a network, and so they're starting to finance their own content.
So these are
And
both places, just to interrupt, that um, FX and WGN make money from advertising, and they were going to put this show on ad-supported television, conventional cable television in the United States.
That's right.
Okay.
And fortunately for us, WGN did not make it. And about a year later, Amazon made a request for it, and we sold it to Amazon. And a year later, through their vetting process, they greenlit and commissioned 3 1-hour pilots and 3 half-hour pilots that they were going to finance, and ours was one of the 3.
So Amazon is a new type of entity that didn't exist before because they're not doing traditional ad-supported. Are they like HBO, or are they? HBO is a subscription service where you pay a monthly fee. What's Amazon's deal?
Amazon is also a subscription, but the way it was explained to me is that because Amazon's business is essentially, if you want to buy something on the internet, Amazon is probably where you would go to get it for the most part. So what they're looking for is they're creating content for literate, middle class and upper middle class people who might want to buy other things on their service. So they're looking for content that will drive people to their site, and they felt that Patriot had a unique version of telling a spy story. And
so let's go into a little bit. Patriot is an hour-long pilot right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was originally written as an hour-long television series that was going to be interrupted with commercials. Now it's an hour-long that isn't interrupted. And what else do you have? Do you have other episodes? Do you have a Bible for the whole show? What did you guys have?
We have ideas, but we don't have a Bible, and we don't have other episodes.
Explain what a Bible might be to people who don't know. What's a Bible?
A Bible is essentially a very specific outline that illustrates what the future episodes are going to be, all the way up to the end of the first season. And some people even construct Bibles in such a way where you can see what's going to happen at the very end of the show. If the conceit requires that, it somehow goes that way.
Right. You've been on some shows. You had a recurring role on 24. You were on Ally McBeal. Those shows probably had Bibles, right?
I don't know if Ally McBeal had a Bible. 24 definitely had a Bible. It was very, very detailed in its construction. The same people who did 24 do Homeland, and you can see that things move in a very specific, metered kind of way. Whereas in Ally McBeal, I think that there were general ideas that were going to happen throughout the year, but somebody could come on the show and be fantastic, and then we would kind of veer in one direction or another.
So just to get back to the differences and the similarities between working with Amazon, in both models, in the old network ad-supported model and in the Amazon model, you make a pilot. You might have a Bible, you might not, but there's something different happening with the way the Patriot is getting approved or not. You alluded to the fact that Amazon greenlit. They agreed to spend money to make a number of pilots, which they were going to make available on the internet. How many again?
3 1-hour shows and 3 1/2-hour shows, and the differences go from there, because the way a traditional network decides whether or not they're going to pick something up is they do some internal testing, and then essentially the executives that are hired by the company make the determination which shows they feel will work on their network, and their jobs are pretty much linked to their choosing correctly or incorrectly those shows.
So just to clarify some terms, So at a 20th century television network, by internal testing, you mean they might show it to a focus group or to people?
Focus groups, and then some of their employees, and maybe spouses and boyfriends of employees. So a very small sample size that they believe represents the general viewing public.
And then they would have to make their decision about what to put on their air based on that small sample. And Amazon is going about it differently.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, will you excuse me for 1 second?
We can pause the video. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, Ria's asking me a pressing question.
Give her my best.
Okay.
She's on Heroes. Who's distributing Heroes?
NBC Universal.
So that's a traditional ad-supported television show, but they only did, what, 10 episodes?
13.
13. But that's more like the old world we're talking about of FX and WGN.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the studio of the future, because you're one of the few producers I know who's doing this kind of traditional hour-long series, but you're going through a different process of getting approvals and vetting and.
Yeah. So the way Amazon is deciding whether or not they're going to do this, which is really exciting, is they kind of have four. They have four matrix that they look at. One of them is a pretty simple, old-fashioned one, which is essentially, was it fun working with you? Did you realize the vision of what it was that we funded you to make? So there's that. Then the second part is they do some internal testing, like the old school model. Then they give it to the critics to review. And then finally, they give it to their subscription base for free, and all the general public can watch it. So everybody can watch it, and they can review it.
And it goes out on the internet. Do you know, are there...
For 1 month.
For 1 month. And are there, and it's out now, right? I'm talking to you on Friday, the 20th in Taipei of November. So it's still available right now, right?
It's available for another 10 days or so, maybe 2 weeks.
And do you know if it's geo-blocked, if it's just English-speaking North America, or?
Well, this is what I know, and is that it's playing in the United States, the UK, Germany, and Japan. But if you were to go on Google Chrome, I'm just saying, if you were, and you got mate, you might be able to see the show. There's a rumor out there.
Okay, so people are watching the show, and how does Amazon collect data about from that audience? Because I understand in the old world they'd hold a focus group and they'd make people stay in the theater after they screened it and ask them questions. What's Amazon doing now?
They do a survey. You can vote on it, and then they ask a bunch of internal questions, and then there are two subsets within that. There's those who are subscription based, and then there's the general public who's being exposed to it. So the high valued voters are the ones who are subscription based and are willing to take the poll afterwards and vote. And from what I can understand, at least, and again, I'll get some more hard data in a few weeks, but I think it works out to be something like every 15th person after they watch will vote. So it's not everybody who watches that votes.
Right. But votes are a key part of whether you get picked up. And what sort of pickup could you get if everything goes well? What are they offering?
They're going to order 9 more shows.
9 more hour-long episodes.
That's right.
And let's see. What's your experience as a producer, just in general, working with Amazon versus pitching things or selling things at other traditional studios? Are there significant cultural differences? Is it better for you? Is it worse for you? What's it like?
I think that what people are starting to understand from the executive side is that in order for things to work at the most optimal level, the relationship between the executives and the creative people needs to be one where the creative's vision is supported. And so micromanaging, I'm sorry, it's my dog.
That,
So micromanaging the creative will homogenize the work and make it all relatively feel like it's coming from a bunch of executives giving notes. And their best, their most successful work will come from strong creative visions that they support. And when I say support, I mean rather than nitpick about the color of somebody's shirt or that line in the fourth scene, that they come to the table with some serious questions and let the creative people do the rest. Traditional networks want to be involved in everything. They want to decide. They want to be the ultimate decision makers on everything. In most cases, there are a few creative voices on network television that have autonomy or relative autonomy, but for the most part, they don't. And because of that, the networks keep losing percentages of viewership because the audiences out there aren't interested in whether it's coming from a network or from cable or now these digital platforms. They're just interested in unique, gripping material. And because that's the ultimate objective, is to capture the imagination of those viewers, those new digital platforms are taking more and more of the percentage of the viewership because they are creating an environment that allows for that thing that the audiences want. And binge watching. You can also binge watch, right? You don't have to wait every week to see something. When it's released, you can see all of it.
so don't tell me anything you shouldn't, but um, the money that comes to a production company is basically they
My bank,
yeah
every single dollar.
they
So,
they
so
go ahead.
no, I'm kidding.
They fund production. Do they cash flow you when you do a pilot? Do they give you weekly amounts that you tell them how much you're going to need? Do they give you all the money in a lump sum? Do you have to go? Do you have to deliver and then they pay you, and you have to borrow the money until you're ready to deliver?
No, your cash flow. And what's great about our relationship with Amazon is because it's just Amazon. There are no studios involved or anything.
Meaning there's nobody financing it besides Amazon that also sticks their finger in.
Exactly. So Amazon is fully. I mean, for them, for our show to work, it's as good as it possibly can be because they own it exclusively. The only other people who have a portion of ownership are, Steve and myself and my other producing partners.
And you worked with HBO. As I recall, won an Emmy for outstanding television movie for Temple Grandin. Um, HBO famously is a great place for filmmakers to work. That was not an hour-long series. That was a movie.
Yeah,
Um,
but they were incredible.
so compare the experience of HBO to Amazon. Are there similarities, differences?
Well, they're both class organizations, and what I mean by that is that the people that you're dealing with are smart, sensitive, creative people who just happen to be executives as opposed to writers and actors and directors and producers. And so they're equally invested in the project. They look at the project as theirs, and what I mean by that is they're in their investment, they're just looking out for the best interests of the project itself. And so their notes, the notes that I got, amazing. The creative suggestions were amazing. The support was amazing. The uh, the the support in release was amazing, and the pride that they took in the accomplishments of the film were as big and equally strong as the ones that we took on our side. And that was a relationship that evolved over 9 years of development. So
Okay, so just a couple more quick questions. I gotta go, and I know you're getting on a plane soon to fly to Thailand. Um, do you have a production company? Are you a studio? What's your workflow like?
well, my workflow is it's pretty unusual. I work with a variety of different writers on a variety of different projects. I had a production company in a traditional sense, in that I had a collection of investors who bought into uh, some of the development that I was doing, and I'm going to discontinue that. I'm going to see those projects through, and they'll the investors continue to have the ownership that they have in those projects. But what I realize is that unless I have the ability to finance um, in a revolving way, both development and put some seed money into production, it makes no sense for me to have a production company.
What do you mean by revolving way? What are you thinking?
Well, if I could get if I could get the kind of financing where let's say, for the sake of argument, I knew that every year I had $250,000 that I could put into developing projects for television and film, and acquiring life rights and book rights. Uh, and let's say I had a commitment for somebody for 3 years to do that, then it would be worth my while to do, because so much of the work that I do, I know the creative people I want to work with, and I guess I'm building up enough of a track record where maybe at some point soon somebody will say, okay, that makes a lot of sense, let's do that, because the rewards of ownership at that level for people who are willing to, it's a high risk game, development, but if you hit once or twice, it's it can be a very lucrative investment.
Okay, since we may have some entrepreneurs listening in the room, let's be a little more specific about. So you're thinking like a credit facility would be okay, where you could draw up to $250,000 US, and you would have to pay whatever you took out back with interest. Would the people who put up that money not get an ownership interest in the movies? They'd only get interest, or what are you thinking?
They would get an executive producer credit on any of the projects, and if it was for television, that would also allow them to have a percentage of ownership. And for a film, they would get a fee as an executive producer, so they would get their money back plus interest plus a fee.
Right. But in the past, what you had done is you had raised a lump sum from people, and then it's similar to what we're talking about. What's the key difference between what you had been doing and this other idea you're thinking about?
Well, the big difference was I felt like I needed. I was building credibility, I guess, and so because of that, I had somebody who was working with me who took a salary, and that salary took a significant portion of the total money that was raised. And the operational stuff, like his job was essentially to go raise money, and he couldn't raise any money, but he took a lot of money from salary.
Right.
And And so I'm not interested in taking any salary out of that. I'm just interested in using it specifically. Like, my investment is my time and my instincts.
Yep.
Right. And my ability to attract creative people. And so I feel like then that's a very good relationship to have with an investor, because when they say, well, you know, what do I'm putting this in, what are you putting in? And I can say, well, my time and my expertise and my relationships.
Right. And just to be clear, even though it's sort of, I think, obvious, you have you have a very good record now of identifying unique properties that can be developed into award-winning um, uh, projects. You are not a line producer. You're not somebody who's going out supervising production. So what you're looking for doesn't require the same sort of infrastructure that you might if you were running, a rental company that had stages and lights and employees to do stuff.
I don't need any money for office space. I mean, all I would, the only money that would be spent other than on hard costs would be a bookkeeper, an accountant, and even my lawyer. My lawyer would, and my lawyer. So
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere between 5 and 7% of the total coming in would be used other than commissioning material. The other thing, Randy, where you're talking about is in terms of identifying. This year was a very seminal year for me in, like, we've all had those big fish stories, the fish that we had on the line and then they went away. I mean, you've had a number of projects that...
I'm going to be talking to David Gale, who had Twilight at Paramount and couldn't get Paramount to pull the trigger. I'm not sure I'm gonna get him to talk about that, because the sobs will just overwhelm everybody who's watching. But anyway, yeah, we all have these stories.
Yeah, so this year I had the rights to the story that was Black Mass, and I was the first person to have The Danish Girl. So, at least one of those two movies is going to get nominated for Best Picture. So, if I could have convinced somebody, when I had the rights to Danish Girl to back me in this way that we're describing, they'd be going to the Academy Awards next year.
Right.
And that's what people like that want to do.
Well, I'm in minding the clock. I know your time is short, mine is too. The purpose of this conversation is for these workshops, which are being billed as digital media entrepreneurship. Hopefully there are people out there who sort of are curious about the film business and are curious about the new models that are evolving, will watch this and gain some insights from what you're talking about, and maybe even get into business with you. Anything else you want to add about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing I would say is it's a very, even when things are going well, they don't move in straight lines. And so if people are interested in this business and getting involved, one thing I would encourage them to do is stay connected to your sense of humor, because you're going to need it. And be patient. If you can be patient and trust that what you're working on has value and merit, at some point you will meet up with people who feel the same way you do, and you'll make beautiful stories.
Yeah, great out. I love you. I'm so grateful for the time you're spending with us. When you get to Thailand, get in touch with me. I doubt I'm going to be able to get away, but I would love to come see you. Where are you going?
I'm going to Pattaya, and then after that, hopefully, someplace quiet and beautiful.
Yeah. Travel safely. Love to your family. So grateful for your time now, and I'll send you a link when this is all sort of put together and ready for the internet.